Jesus said, "If you have faith like a mustard seed." Could something so small really change everything? A mountain stands before you, unmovable, impossible. But heaven says faith can move it. Don't wait for big faith to start. God uses the smallest spark to light the impossible. One day, the disciples came to Jesus in doubt. They had tried to cast out a demon, and failed. Confused and discouraged, they asked, "Why couldn't we?" Jesus looked at them with truth in his eyes. "Because of your little faith," he said. But even faith like a mustard seed can move mountains. The mustard seed was the tiniest seed they knew. Yet when planted, it grew taller than all herbs. It became a shelter for birds. A tree born from near nothing. Jesus used it to describe faith. Because small things in God's hand become mighty. Faith doesn't start big. It begins with a whisper, a yes, a single step. Abraham left his home not knowing where. Moses raised a staff before the sea parted. David picked up a small stone. Small faith, big results. Faith is not about feelings. It's about trust in what God said. When fear shouts loud, faith quietly says, "He is with me." It may look small to others, but heaven calls it powerful. Jesus showed what mustard seed faith looks like. He spoke to winds and they obeyed. He touched the sick, and they stood. He thanked God before the miracle happened. Because real faith believes before it sees. Even when the seed is still buried. A bleeding woman believed in secret. "If I just touch his robe, I'll be healed." No shouting, no stage, no grand gesture. Just a mustard seed of faith. And power flowed from Jesus instantly. Faith doesn't need noise, just belief. A Roman centurion came to Jesus. His servant was dying, yet he didn't demand signs. "Just say the word," he told Jesus. Jesus was amazed. "I haven't seen such great faith in Israel." Even small trust honors God. Faith isn't about having the answer. It's about trusting the one who does. The mustard seed doesn't move mountains by itself. God does through it. Even the smallest prayer, when real, echoes in heaven. There was once a desperate father. His son was tormented day and night. He cried, "Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief." Jesus didn't reject him. He honored his weak but honest faith. And healed his son instantly. It's not the size of your faith, but where you place it. Faith in yourself will fail. Faith in God never does. Even when you tremble, your seed of trust moves heaven. Jesus once cursed a fig tree, not to show anger, but to teach the power of spoken faith. The disciples were shocked. He told them, "You can say to this mountain, 'Be moved,' and it will." Faith is not just believing God can. It's living like He will. It steps before the path appears. It speaks life into dead places. It sows when the ground looks dry. That's mustard seed faith. The enemy wants to make you doubt. He'll whisper, "You're too weak, too small." But God loves using the overlooked. Gideon defeated armies with 300 men. Esther saved a nation with one word. Faith makes the small unstoppable. Faith doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in pressure, storms, silence. Every trial is a chance to plant deeper roots. Every delay is watering the seed. And in God's timing, the harvest comes. When you plant a mustard seed, you don't see results overnight. The soil looks quiet, the surface unchanged. But something powerful is happening beneath. Roots are forming, life is stirring. Faith works the same way. It may look invisible for a while, but beneath the silence, God is moving. And one day, what was hidden will break through with power. No one applauds the early stages of faith. They don't see the silent prayers, the quiet tears, the battles you never speak of. But heaven sees it all and calls it precious. For every moment you chose to believe when it didn't make sense. Every time you stood when your heart wanted to give up. Those are the mountains already beginning to move. The devil doesn't fear your strength. He fears your faith. Because faith connects you to God's power, not your own. Even the smallest amount, when placed in His hands, becomes a weapon against fear, darkness, and doubt. You may not feel powerful, but your mustard seed faith shakes spiritual realms. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. It starts unnoticed, buried in dirt, surrounded by silence. but slowly surely it rises. What begins as invisible faith turns into visible fruit. It shelters, it grows, it multiplies. That's what God does with the smallest beginnings. Sometimes your faith won't change your situation instantly, but it will change you in the situation. It will give you strength when you're weak, peace in the chaos, and hope when everything seems lost. Faith doesn't always remove the mountain. Sometimes it gives you the strength to climb it. Even when your faith feels fragile, God is not asking for perfection, He's asking for persistence. He never said you had to move the mountain alone. He just said believe, trust, step forward. Because the one who made the mountain is the same one who can move it for you. Never underestimate what God can do with something small. A shepherd boy defeated a giant with one stone. A widow's last jar of oil never ran dry. A baby in a manger became a mercy for mankind. It was never about how much you had. It's always been about who you're trusting with it. There will be days when your faith feels like it's breaking. When prayers feel unanswered, doors stay shut, and silence is louder than hope. But that's when the mustard seed is most powerful. Not when everything is going right, but when you still believe anyway. Because that tiny seed of trust in the darkness can one day burst into light that feeds many. Don't compare your faith to others. God doesn't ask you to have the faith of Abraham or the courage of Daniel. He asks for your mustard seed, real, honest, and given to Him. That's enough to move heaven. Because when it's in God's hands, even the smallest gift becomes unstoppable. Sometimes the enemy will try to shame your progress. He'll say you're not growing fast enough, that your faith is too weak. But seeds grow quietly, roots grow deep before branches show. God is not rushed. He honors slow obedience, silent surrender. So don't let shame choke what God is nurturing. Your mustard seed is alive. The mustard seed reminds us that beginnings don't need to be big. They need to be planted. Faith that stays in your hand stays potential. But faith planted in obedience begins the miracle. God doesn't grow what we only admire. He grows what we surrender. There's a mountain in your way. Maybe it's fear, addiction, grief, rejection, or regret. You don't have to move it with force or perfection. Just believe that your Father can. Speak to the mountain, not in your name, but in His. And watch what mustard seed faith can do. One act of faith can change generations. One prayer can shift a family's future. One step in obedience can open the floodgates of heaven. The seed you plant today may become the tree your children rest beneath. So even if no one sees it now, keep planting, keep praying, keep believing. When you feel like giving up, remember this. Even a mustard seed doesn't stop growing in the dark. It keeps reaching, keeps pushing, because its strength doesn't come from the world around it, but from the life God placed inside it. And so does yours. Peter stepped out of the boat with nothing but a mustard seed of courage. The wind was wild, the waves violent. Logic said stay inside. But faith said, step toward the voice calling you. And for a moment, water became ground. Yes, he sank, but before he fell, he walked. Because even imperfect faith moves you toward miracles. Faith is not pretending the mountain isn't real. It's choosing to believe it doesn't have the final word. It's saying, I see the size of the problem, but I also see the power of my God. Faith doesn't deny reality. It declares God is greater than it. When the mustard seed is crushed, it releases oil. When your faith is tested, what comes out? Do you still praise in pain, trust in loss, hope in waiting? That's when faith becomes fragrant before heaven. God isn't looking for loud faith. He's looking for lasting faith. There are people around you watching your small steps. They may not tell you, but your mustard seed faith is planting courage in their hearts. When you rise again, they learn resilience. When you pray through tears, they witness strength. Your faith is never just about you. Jesus never said the mustard seed would skip storms. He said it would grow through them. It will bend, sway, tremble, but not break. Because what God plants, He protects. And what He waters, He finishes. You will survive this season and grow stronger through it. Some days, your seed of faith may look buried forever, covered by disappointment, shaded by fear, drowned in tears. But buried is not dead. In God's kingdom, burial is often the beginning of resurrection. Your seed is in the soil of His promise. It will rise in His time. Heaven is not counting your failures. It's recording your moments of faith. When you stood firm, even afraid. When you prayed, even with doubt in your heart. When you trusted, even when trembling. That's mustard seed faith, and it moves mountains heaven sees. In a world that celebrates instant success, faith asks you to wait. Wait when nothing changes. Wait when no one notices. Wait while still believing that something is happening in the unseen. Mustard seed faith doesn't grow in applause. It grows in stillness, in trust, in daily surrender. And in the waiting, God is working. The enemy will say, it's too small to matter. But God says, I can do everything with nothing. He formed the universe from a word. He raised the dead with a whisper. So what makes you think He can't use your small step? Your broken prayer, your mustard seed? You don't need to see the whole staircase. Faith climbs even when only the next step is visible. It says, I trust you, even when I don't understand. Each obedient step becomes part of the miracle. Because mountains don't move all at once. They shift with each faithful step. The mustard seed doesn't compare itself. It just grows day by day deeper and higher. Your faith doesn't have to look like theirs. God is writing a story through your seed, not someone else's. So stop measuring. Start trusting. The fruit will come in His timing. Jesus never asked for giant, flawless faith. He asked for faith that starts. Faith that says, I believe you, Lord, even if it's just barely. That faith is enough for God to work with. You don't need perfect belief to see a miracle. You just need real belief. God doesn't need your strength. He needs your surrender. The seed does not push itself to grow. It lets the soil hold it, the water soak it, the sun warm it. Let God carry the weight of what you can't control. You weren't meant to grow alone. You were meant to grow with Him. So if you're feeling small, weak, overlooked, you are in the perfect place for God to work. Because He never needed a crowd, just one heart that believes. Mountains don't move because we push them. They move because He responds to our trust. Your mustard seed is more powerful than you know. Think of the times you believed when no one else did. The prayers you whispered in the dark. The quiet faith that never made headlines, but touched heaven. Those were not wasted moments. God sees the seeds you've sown in silence. And He is faithful to bring the harvest. You might not feel it today, but something is growing inside you. That persistent trust, that refusal to give up, that choice to believe again. It's changing you from the inside out. Your faith may not be loud, but it is loud in heaven. And that is where the real power lies. Small faith, big God, endless results. Your mustard seed faith is not forgotten. It's written in books eternal, seen by eyes divine. While others look for outward success, God treasures inward trust. He's building something eternal through your everyday belief. Mountains will move. Doors will open. And it all started with one tiny yes. One day, you'll see clearly. The seed you planted in tears grew into joy. The step you took in fear led to freedom. The prayer you prayed in weakness brought a miracle. God never forgets the faith that trusts Him completely, not even when it feels small. And when you reach the other side of your mountain, when you finally see what God was doing all along, you'll realize the seed was never small to Him. He was using it to write your story, shape your soul, and reveal His power through your trust. Faith is what made it all possible. God is not waiting for you to be stronger. He's inviting you to be surrendered. He doesn't need your perfection, just your permission. Let Him take your mustard seed and breathe on it. Watch what happens when heaven joins your faith. Even the impossible bows to Him. This is the truth Jesus wanted us to understand. That faith doesn't begin with greatness. It begins with trust. Simple, raw, honest trust in the God who never fails. If you've got a mustard seed, you've got more than enough. Faith like a mustard seed breaks chains. It opens closed hearts. It walks into fire and comes out untouched. It feeds thousands with nothing but hope. It walks on water. It pleases God more than anything else ever could. If you've been doubting lately, if you feel like your faith is too small to matter, this is your reminder. God never asked you for much. Just your trust. Just your yes. The seed is still powerful. And it's not done growing. Let the world chase size and status. You chase surrender and trust. Because it's not by might, not by power, but by His Spirit that mountains move. You don't need to be loud to be heard in heaven. You just need faith that refuses to give up. So plant it. That prayer. That obedience. That risk. That hope. Even if no one else understands. Because the one who created the universe has promised that even mustard seed faith can move the impossible. Your seed of faith matters more than you know. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that God honors even the smallest steps. And if you haven't yet, subscribe for more powerful Bible stories that strengthen your faith.